While Scottie Barnes was ranked 30th, here's why the Toronto Raptors' disrespect must stop. ESPN ranking Brandon Ingram as the NBA's 77th best player is absolutely blasphemous. Let's look at the main reason why ESPN might be ranking him number 77, and then get into why it's completely ridiculous as to why he's ranked behind some of the players he is. In the 2024 playoffs, 2 years after averaging 27, 6, and 6 in the 2022 playoffs on elite efficiency, in 2024, Ingram was one of the more disappointing players in the postseason, as he averaged just 14 on a 35-25-90 shooting split. What needs to be considered is that this was a series where the Pelicans were without Zion Williamson, meaning the team with the league's 4th best defensive rating that year in the future championship-winning OKC Thunder were able to hone in on and neutralize Ingram. While ESPN didn't note this in their ranking, this playoff series had to be a subconscious reason for why he wasn't ranked higher. But this is a 6-time 20-plus point per game scorer we're talking about, who did have one playoff series that stands out as elite, and that series should be valued higher given it was his playoff debut and against more reasonable competition than the powerhouse Thunder when he was without Zion. So with all due respect, the fact that he's below every player ahead of him in the bottom 50 in my opinion is wrong, but it's specifically crazy that he's behind evidently sub-tier players like Brandon Miller, Derek Lively, Kobe White, Michael Porter Jr., Josh Hart, Cameron Johnson, Denny Avdia, Aaron Nesmith, Christian Brown, Paul George, and Cooper Flagg. As ESPN did note in their ranking, but for whatever reason didn't take it seriously enough to rank Ingram higher than 77th, is that the Raptors ranked last in off-the-dribble jumpers last season, while Ingram ranked 7th in such makes over the past 5 seasons. That should have a real impact on how the Raptors' offense flows next season. Beyond 2024's cold playoff stretch, Ingram's regular season numbers in 2024-25 more than justify a much higher ranking. He averaged 22.2 points, 5.6 rebounds, and 5.2 assists over 18 games despite a nagging ankle injury and a mid-season trade. His shooting splits were solid too, 46.5% from the field, 37.4% from 3, and 85.5% from the line. That's not just useful scoring, that's efficient two-way wing play. And when we look at his career playoff averages, Ingram has 21.9 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game, with 37.1% from 3 overall. The dip in 2024 was real, but it was also only over 4 games, and context matters. OKC locked in defensively, the Pelicans were undermanned without Zion, and Ingram faced huge defensive pressure, so a short, poor showing shouldn't overshadow the broader body of work, especially given how consistent he's been. Additionally, when you look at where ESPN tends to place other players ahead of him, some with less production, less efficiency, or less upside, the decision becomes more mystifying. If someone like Michael Porter Jr., Josh Hart, or Cameron Johnson are ahead, one has to ask what criteria are being overweighted. Recent playoff reputation, defensive versatility, injury risk, popularity? Because Ingram's got solid defensive tools, explosive scoring ability both off the catch and off the dribble, and he's already proven he can carry heavy offensive loads. On top of that, his recent contract and trade to Toronto show that teams still believe in him. They offered him a substantial deal which reflects market value and expectations. Ranking him 77 suggests ESPN is either severely downgrading his upside or overpenalizing that short playoff sample. In fairness, every player has peaks and valleys, but by that logic, many of the players ahead of him in the list deserve similar scrutiny, yet don't seem to suffer the same steep drop in perceived value from ESPN's rankings. Torontonian RJ Barrett being ranked number 100 on ESPN's top 100 players list, while projected to average about 20.9 points per game next season, makes him the lowest ranked projected 20-plus point per game scorer on the list by a significant margin. To put that in perspective, Norman Powell, who averaged 21.8 points per game last season and is similarly expected to break the 20-point threshold again, is ranked far higher at number 82. That 18-spot gap between Powell and Barrett is huge when talking about players who are both expected to score heavily. Barrett's placement suggests that despite his scoring value, ESPN's ranking panel considers a lot of other factors to have dragged his relative value down more than they do with Powell or other scorers. There's several indications of this gap. First, it indicates that scoring alone isn't being valued nearly as highly in the panel's projections as efficiency, role clarity, defensive contributions, or team expectation, all of which apparently favor players like Poeltl over Barrett. Second, it portrays the panel's skepticism over Barrett's consistency, or possibly over his fit in the Raptors' evolving roster with more mouths to feed. And third, it raises questions about how projections raise scoring upside versus proven performance. Barrett's shown he can get to 20-plus points and fill out across other counting stats, but evidently isn't being credited enough for it relative to others. Ultimately, ranking a reliable 20-point scorer like Barrett at number 100 suggests ESPN sees him more as a borderline piece than a core one, which many would argue is underrating what he brings given his stats and potential. Then there's Jakob Poeltl, who should have been ranked higher than number 93. First, look at what Poeltl has been doing on the court. In 2024-25, he averaged 14.5 points, 9.6 rebounds, and 2.8 assists per game, while playing nearly 30 minutes per night. His shooting was ridiculously efficient, over 62% from the field, putting him among the top in field goal percentage league-wide. Add that to solid peripheral stats, around 1.2 steals, 1.2 blocks per game, showing rim protection and hustle. Given those numbers, he's more than just a role setter or defensive big. He contributes in multiple facets with elite efficiency. Also, he's staying committed. The Raptors extended him on a 4-year, $104 million deal. That kind of money suggests the organization views him as a core piece, not a throw-in or bench filler. Secondly, what are the criticisms ESPN leveled in ranking him number 93, and do they hold up? ESPN's write-up mentions that one reason he might be held back is that, while once a premier rim protector, his protection is only average in this regard with Toronto. Also, his availability is a factor. He's missed a combined 57 games over the past 2 seasons, though some were rest. Those are legitimate concerns. Consistency, defensive timing, and physical tracking over a full season do matter. But looking at his performance when he is on the court, he more than compensates in impact and efficiency. He's one of the better rebounders in the league, especially per minute, and he rarely takes bad shots. His usage doesn't require inefficient volume, which means his numbers are sustainable. Also, his passing/assist numbers are decent for a center with his role, indicating he helps with offensive flow. Given all that, it seems fair to argue that number 93 underestimates his value, both for what he already is and what he should be going forward. So in summary, with his combination of efficiency, rebounding, defensive presence, multi-stat contributions, and the team's commitment via contract, there's a strong case for placing him well above 93. If you consider other players around that range, many have bigger question marks in terms of efficiency, consistency, or role. At the end of the day, when you stack up everything we've covered, Brandon Ingram sitting at 77 despite proven all-star level play, RJ Barrett buried at 100 while projected to score over 20 a night, Jakob Poeltl at 93 despite being one of the league's most efficient and steady bigs, a pattern starts to emerge. The Toronto Raptors aren't just being overlooked, they're being actively disrespected in the national conversation. Aside from Scotty's 30th ranking, ESPN's rankings read less like a fair assessment and more like a series of lazy assumptions about a roster that's quietly retooled into one of the East's most intriguing teams. If the panel wants to sleep on a core of young stars, elite scorers, and highly efficient veterans, fine. But history shows that underestimating Toronto rarely ends well. The Raptors have a chance to turn this snub narrative into fuel, and come spring, those same analysts may be scrambling to rewrite their takes.